On a chilly October night in the year 2009, investigators comb through the dense, sprawling woods of St. Martin's, Missouri, searching for a missing 9-year-old girl. Hundreds of volunteers navigate the heavy brush with flashlights, casting long, frantic shadows against the oak trees. Back in the neighborhood, Federal Bureau of Investigation agents narrow their focus onto a teenage neighbor, projecting an unnerving calm amid the deafening chaos of police sirens. A search of this 15-year-old's bedroom yields a hidden notebook containing ink-stained pages that freeze the missing person investigation. Investigators read a fresh entry describing the taking of a human life in casual terms, with the author calling the experience absolutely amazing. The entry concludes with the teenager noting she feels nervous and shaky, right before mentioning she has to attend a youth church service. This harrowing document confirms that the predator is not a transient stranger, but a trusted neighbor who planned a tragedy days in advance. Before the tragedy shattered its peace, St. Martin's, Missouri, stood as a tranquil, tight-knit rural community where residents left their doors unlocked and neighbors knew each other by name. The town rests just west of Jefferson City, defined by vast stretches of agricultural land, quiet county roads, and thick clusters of ancient oak and hickory trees. The local geography fostered a profound sense of isolation and security, shielding families from the chaotic pace of urban life. 9-year-old Elizabeth Olton thrived in this wholesome environment, projecting a vibrant and gentle spirit that captivated everyone she met. She spent countless hours engaged in innocent outdoor play, often seen riding her bicycle down the residential streets with a bright smile. Elizabeth harbored a deep affection for animals, dedicating her free time to caring for her family's cats and tending to the gentle creatures wandering into her yard. Despite her cheerful and adventurous daytime demeanor, the young girl possessed a notorious, paralyzing fear of the dark. Once the sun began to sink below the tree line, she demanded the safety and warmth of her brightly lit home. Her entire world revolved around her loving parents, her siblings, and the simple, predictable rhythms of a Midwestern childhood. Her parents provided a nurturing sanctuary, unaware of the looming shadow gathering just a few hundred yards away. The sprawling woods behind their property served as a natural boundary, separating their safe haven from the rest of the neighborhood. This false sense of geographical security would soon mask a terrifying reality developing right next door. A small stretch of uneven woodland created a physical divide between the Olton family residence and the neighboring houses on the adjacent street. This narrow, forested barrier consisted of tangled underbrush, steep dirt inclines, and thick canopies blocking out the moonlight during the night. A well-worn dirt path cut straight through the center of this timber, serving as a convenient shortcut for neighborhood children traveling between homes. Just down the road, on the opposite side of this tree line, lived 15-year-old Alyssa Bustameste. She resided with her grandparents, who obtained legal custody years prior due to immense instability in her biological parents' lives. To the casual observer, Alyssa projected the standard, moody persona of a typical high school student navigating adolescence. She attended local classes, maintained a circle of friends, and participated in standard teenage social gatherings. However, beneath this remarkably ordinary facade, she concealed profound psychological turmoil and deep-seated disturbances. A digital trail of alarming internet behavior showcased a dark persona obsessed with violence and macabre themes. She frequently posted grim photographs and unsettling statements on social media platforms, waving massive red flags ignored by the surrounding community. Local authorities and mental health professionals had previously interacted with her regarding severe episodes of self-directed harm. Yet the systemic protocols failed to recognize the escalating threat she posed to others. The rigid confines of privacy laws and a lack of unified institutional communication allowed a dangerous predator to remain integrated within a neighborhood full of vulnerable children. Alyssa maintained a dual existence, blending into the fabric of St. Martin's while harboring unspeakable desires. She attended a local youth church group, sitting among peers and projecting an image of faith and community involvement. Her grandparents provided a stable home environment, oblivious to the predatory thoughts consuming the teenager sleeping down the hall. This stark contrast between her outward normalcy and her internal darkness illustrates the terrifying reality that monsters rarely look the part. The 15-year-old possessed an arrogant conviction of her own superiority, believing she could outsmart the adults and authority figures in her life. She studied the anatomy of the human body and researched the mechanics of fatal injuries on the internet, transforming her bedroom into a silent sanctuary of morbid curiosity. Furthermore, she sought out legal loopholes regarding the juvenile justice system, leaving a digital footprint that later baffled forensic investigators. While Elizabeth spent her afternoons engaged in innocent play, Alyssa spent her time analyzing the surrounding environment for vulnerabilities. The close proximity of their respective houses provided the older girl with a front-row seat to the daily routines of the younger neighborhood children. She memorized the times they left for school, the paths they walked, and the specific fears they harbored. The dense woods connecting their properties offered the perfect concealed theater for the horrific act taking shape in her mind. No one in the quiet rural enclave of St. Martin's could have predicted that a trusted teenager was methodically preparing to inflict an irreversible tragedy upon a trusting child. On the late afternoon of Wednesday, October 21st, 2009, the crisp autumn air settled over the quiet streets of St. Martin's. Elizabeth returned home from school, eager to spend her remaining daylight hours playing with her friends in the neighborhood. She asked her mother for permission to walk over to the neighboring house, a routine request carrying no hint of danger. The destination sat just a few hundred yards away, requiring only a brief trek along the familiar dirt path cutting through the center of the woods. Her mother granted permission, trusting the established safety of their secluded, close-knit rural enclave. Elizabeth ventured into the trees, wearing a bright pink top and comfortable play clothes, unaware of the eyes watching her movements. She arrived safely at the neighbor's residence, spending the next hour engaged in typical childhood games and laughter. The afternoon passed without incident as the children enjoyed the fading warmth of the autumn sun. Meanwhile, 15-year-old Alyssa was also present on the property, having utilized her own younger sister to orchestrate the gathering. The older teenager lingered on the periphery, projecting a calm, unbothered demeanor while setting a long gestating plan into motion. As the clock edged past 5 in the evening, the sky began to transition from a bright blue to a deep, dusky orange. The dense canopy of oak trees stretching across the neighborhood began to cast long, imposing shadows over the dirt pathways. At 5:15 in the evening, Elizabeth's mother picked up her cellular telephone and dialed the neighbors to check on her daughter. The mother instructed the young girl to begin the walk back home immediately, knowing the sun would soon dip below the horizon. Elizabeth acknowledged the directive, saying her goodbyes before stepping off the pavement and back onto the familiar wooded trail. The journey from the neighbor's back door to the Olton residence should have taken no more than 5 to 10 minutes at a leisurely walking pace. The physical distance was incredibly short, a straight line navigating through a sparse patch of brush and dirt inclines. As Elizabeth disappeared into the tree line, the fading ambient light rapidly transformed the woods into a dark, imposing environment. Back at the Olton house, her mother waited near the door, expecting to see the young girl emerge from the brush at any moment. 10 minutes slowly ticked by, followed by 15, yet the edge of the woods remained completely still and silent. The mother stepped outside, scanning the tree line and listening closely for the sound of snapping twigs or footsteps. The heavy, deafening hum of evening cicadas and the rustling wind were the only sounds echoing through the rural properties. Given Elizabeth's intense, paralyzing fear of the dark, her failure to sprint out of the shadowy woods struck her mother as deeply wrong. A cold, creeping sense of dread began to replace the initial irritation of a child running late. Refusing to wait another minute, the frantic mother grabbed her telephone and began dialing the surrounding neighbors. She asked if anyone had seen Elizabeth detour or stop to pet a stray animal along the road, but every answer came back negative. The sheer impossibility of a child vanishing across such a tiny, contained geographical space sent panic coursing through the family. At 5:45 in the evening, realizing the absolute worst-case scenario might be unfolding, the family contacted local law enforcement. The Cole County Sheriff's Department received the distressed call and dispatched patrol vehicles to the rural neighborhood with immediate urgency. By nightfall, the last remnants of daylight vanished, plunging the dense Missouri woodland into total impenetrable darkness. First responders arrived on the scene, activating their heavy, rotating emergency lights and painting the quiet houses in frantic flashes of red and blue. Word of the missing 9-year-old spread through the tight-knit community like wildfire, prompting dozens of neighbors to grab heavy-duty flashlights and rush out their front doors. The previously silent residential street transformed into a chaotic staging ground for a massive, uncoordinated search effort. Police officers began knocking on every single door, systematically demanding answers and searching surrounding properties for any sign of the vibrant young girl. Law enforcement realized they were not dealing with a simple case of a lost child wandering off the path. The chilling, undeniable reality set in that someone or something had intercepted Elizabeth during that brief 5-minute walk through the trees. The command center materialized within hours at a local church, transforming the rural tranquility of St. Martin's into a military-style staging ground. Federal Bureau of Investigation agents arrived in heavy tactical gear, coordinating a massive grid search alongside the Cole County Sheriff Department and the Missouri State Highway Patrol. The geographical layout presented an immediate logistical nightmare for the rescue teams. A deep ravine cut through the center of the dense woods, flanked by steep dirt inclines and tangled clusters of thorny underbrush. The darkness swallowed the beams of heavy-duty halogen flashlights, reducing visibility to a mere 5 feet in any direction. State troopers deployed specialized canine tracking units at the exact edge of the pavement where Elizabeth last stood. The highly trained bloodhounds dropped their noses to the damp soil, pulling their handlers down the narrow dirt path. The heavy metallic clink of the dog collars echoed through the freezing autumn air as they navigated the brush. The search dogs halted just 20 yards into the tree line, sitting back on their haunches in confusion. The scent trail vanished into thin air, leaving the canine units pacing in frustrated circles. This abrupt end to the physical trail marked the first major investigative dead end of the night. Law enforcement realized the young girl did not wander off the path and become lost in the expansive timber. Someone intercepted her journey before she could even reach the midpoint of the wooded barrier. While search teams combed the freezing woods step by step, local detectives began a systematic canvass of the surrounding residential properties. Uniformed officers knocked on every single door, presenting neighbors with a photograph of the smiling 9-year-old girl. The search perimeter extended directly to the residence where 15-year-old Alyssa lived with her grandparents. Detectives stepped onto the front porch, shining their flashlights across the standard suburban facade before ringing the doorbell. Alyssa answered the door wearing casual clothing, projecting a calm and collected demeanor. When questioned about her missing neighbor, the teenager offered a firm, unwavering narrative. She claimed she had seen Elizabeth earlier that evening, stating the young girl simply walked toward the trail and disappeared into the trees. Her voice never wavered, and her facial expressions remained neutral while speaking with seasoned investigators. She looked the officers directly in the eye, offering no nervous tics or physical signs of deception. The detectives documented her statement and moved on to the next house, temporarily clearing her as a witness. This calculated deception highlights the terrifying reality of a predator hiding in plain sight, weaponizing their own perceived innocence. She returned to her bedroom and slept deeply while hundreds of frantic volunteers tore the woods apart just outside her window. The investigation pushed forward through the agonizing night, oblivious to the fact that the primary architect of the tragedy sat comfortably mere yards from the command center. The sun rose on Thursday, October 22, 2009, casting a cold morning light over the exhausted search crews. Federal Bureau of Investigation behavioral analysts began a deep psychological profile of the immediate neighborhood residents. The microscopic time frame of the disappearance indicated a localized threat, pointing authorities back to the teenagers who frequently walked the dirt trail. Analysts requested background files on every juvenile in the vicinity, slamming directly into a massive wall of bureaucratic red tape. Rigid privacy laws restricted access to medical and psychiatric records for individuals under the age of 18. Investigators soon uncovered an infuriating systemic failure regarding the local mental health infrastructure. 2 years prior to the tragedy, state psychiatric facilities evaluated Alyssa following severe episodes of self-directed harm. Medical professionals documented her escalating dark ideations and profound psychological disturbances during multiple inpatient stays. However, rigid hospital protocols prohibited the sharing of these critical warning signs with the local police department. The Cole County Sheriff Department possessed 0 localized alert systems to monitor individuals exhibiting known severe predatory markers. A dangerous individual slipped through the cracks of a fractured healthcare system, returning to a neighborhood full of vulnerable children. This profound lack of institutional communication stripped parents of their right to protect their own families from an established threat. The legal loopholes protecting juvenile medical privacy ultimately enabled a predator to plot a tragedy without any law enforcement oversight. Denied immediate access to formal psychiatric records, federal agents pivoted their strategy and launched a deep digital forensic dive. Investigators scoured public social media platforms, searching for any digital footprint left by the teenagers residing on the street. They located a publicly accessible profile belonging to the 15-year-old neighbor, uncovering an absolute goldmine of disturbing evidence. The digital pages featured grim photographs depicting severe self-directed harm presented for the world to see. Agents scrolled through dark statements and unsettling artwork, demonstrating an overwhelming obsession with the taking of human life. A major red flag emerged when cyber experts analyzed her internet search history from the weeks prior. The teenager researched local criminal statutes, seeking out specific legal loopholes regarding the juvenile justice system. She sought information on the specific penalties for major felonies committed by individuals under the age of 16. This digital trail shattered the facade of the ordinary, moody high school student presented on the front porch the night before. The stoic demeanor she displayed during the initial police canvass shifted from typical teenage apathy to calculated, predatory masking. Agents rushed this digital intelligence back to the local command center, altering the entire trajectory of the sprawling investigation. The frantic search for a lost child evolved into a targeted operation centered on a single suburban house. By Thursday evening, Law enforcement possessed enough circumstantial evidence to convince a judge to authorize a comprehensive search warrant for the residence. On the morning of Friday, October 23, 2009, a tactical team of state and federal authorities surrounded the grandparents' residence. Heavy boots crossed the threshold, moving systematically through the hallways to secure the structure. The physical layout of the single-story home placed the teenager's bedroom at the end of a long, carpeted corridor. Investigators opened the hollow wooden door, stepping into a dimly lit space covered in dark posters and chaotic scribbles. Crime scene technicians began a slow, methodical search of the small room, pulling apart the mattress and emptying out dresser drawers. Every piece of clothing, every discarded paper, and every digital storage device went into clear, plastic evidence bags. Deep within the personal belongings, a sharp-eyed agent located a hidden, unassuming blue notebook tucked away from plain view. The agent flipped open the cover, scanning handwritten pages filled with standard teenage grievances and mundane daily complaints. The tone of the writing abruptly shifted on the final ink-stained page, stopping the entire federal investigation cold. Investigators read a fresh entry, documenting the taking of a human life in casual, emotionless detail. The author described the sensory experience of inflicting a permanent tragedy upon another person, calling the horrific absolutely amazing. She documented her own physical reactions, noting she felt nervous and shaky in the immediate aftermath of the event. The chilling entry concluded with a mundane complaint about needing to attend a youth church service later that evening. The contents of the hidden notebook dismantled the desperate hope of finding the young girl alive. Detectives realized this horrific event did not stem from a sudden impulse or an accidental confrontation in the woods. The investigation teams moved their focus to the dense tree line extending behind the teenager's house. Forensic experts pushed through the heavy underbrush, mapping out the precise distances between the residential property and the deepest section of the timber. Deep within a secluded cluster of towering hickory trees, agents made a terrifying reality-altering discovery. The authorities uncovered the distinct outlines of two shallow, rectangular depressions carved into the damp Missouri soil. Physical evidence scattered around the disturbed earth proved these trenches were excavated by hand 5 full days before the tragic disappearance. The predator ventured into the freezing woods with a shovel, preparing the ground nearly a week in advance. The discovery of a second separate hole revealed an even darker layer of premeditated malice gripping the neighborhood. Investigators deduced this second trench was intended for a different target who narrowly avoided a similar fate. The meticulous preparation demonstrated a cold, calculating patience rarely seen in offenders of any age, let alone a 15-year-old child. The profound geographical proximity of the site meant the teenager looked out her bedroom window every single night, staring at the hidden graves she had dug. A predator waited in the shadows of St. Martin's, holding a shovel and watching the neighborhood children play, simply waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The investigation shifted from the freezing woods to a sterile interrogation room inside the Cole County Sheriff Department. The stark space featured bare cinder-block walls, a heavy steel door, and a single metal table bolted to the floor. This confined environment sat several miles away from the sprawling, chaotic search grid consuming the rural neighborhood. Detectives escorted the 15-year-old into the room, seating her directly under the harsh fluorescent lights. A veteran investigator retrieved a clear plastic evidence bag containing the blue notebook and placed it flat on the metal surface. The teenager stared down at her own ink-stained handwriting documenting the fatal assault. Confronted with this undeniable physical evidence, the carefully constructed facade of the innocent cooperative neighbor completely shattered. Her posture slumped, and the stoic mask melted away into cold, calculating admission, she confessed to orchestrating the fatal encounter, detailing the precise steps taken to ensure the 9-year-old would fall into the trap. She admitted using her own younger sister to lure the trusting child over for an afternoon play date. When investigators pressed for a motive behind the extreme premeditation, the teenager offered a chillingly simple response. She stated she merely wanted to discover what the physical act of ending a human life would feel like. This absolute absence of empathy horrified seasoned detectives accustomed to complex criminal motives. On Sunday, October 25, 2009, a convoy of unmarked police vehicles returned to the quiet streets of St. Martin's. Law enforcement transported the teenager back to the exact geographical center of the ongoing tragedy. Heavy boots hit the pavement. Car doors slammed shut. Agents formed a tight perimeter around the 15-year-old. She walked past her grandparents' house without hesitation. She led the Federal Bureau of Investigation agents directly toward the dense timber, separating the residential streets. The group stepped off the paved road and descended into the shadows of the heavy oak canopy. The teenager navigated the uneven dirt inclines and tangled underbrush with practiced familiarity. She guided the authorities deep into the woods, stopping roughly a quarter of a mile from the safety of the Olton family home. The freezing wind whipped through the barren branches. Dead leaves crunched under the weight of heavy tactical boots. She pointed a single finger toward a secluded cluster of towering hickory trees. Beneath the thick layer of fallen foliage lay a meticulously concealed depression in the damp earth. Crime scene technicians moved forward, cordoning off the perimeter with bright yellow tape. Investigators dropped to their knees in the freezing mud, carefully brushing away the top layer of freshly scattered branches and pine needles. The loose soil gave way, revealing the shallow trench carved into the forest floor 5 days prior. Deep within the earth, authorities made a grim, heartbreaking discovery that permanently stopped the massive statewide search. The vibrant 9-year-old girl met a brutal permanent end in the dark woods she feared so much. Physical evidence at the site indicated the perpetrator subjected the victim to extreme thermal damage in a failed attempt to destroy forensic clues. The horrifying reality of the scene confirmed the absolute worst fears of the frantic parents waiting just down the road. The teenager stood nearby in police custody, watching the authorities unearth the nightmare she created. Detectives placed her in heavy steel handcuffs, securing her in the back of a patrol vehicle. The rotating red and blue emergency lights illuminated the tree line, signaling the devastating conclusion of the rescue mission. The false security of the tight-knit rural enclave vanished forever into the cold autumn night. The predator, hiding in plain sight, finally faced the full weight of the justice system. The horrific revelation that a local high school student plotted the demise of a 9-year-old neighbor sent shockwaves of grief through the state of Missouri. Law enforcement immediately transferred the perpetrator to a secure detention facility, initiating a complex and deeply flawed legal process. The Cole County prosecutor faced an immediate jurisdictional hurdle regarding the age of the offender. State laws traditionally protected juvenile defendants, prioritizing rehabilitation over severe punitive measures. However, the immense premeditation demonstrated by the Purdue graves demanded a much harsher judicial response. Prosecutors filed a formal motion requesting the court bypass the juvenile justice system entirely. A judge reviewed the extensive forensic evidence, the handwritten confession, and the chilling psychological evaluations. The court officially ruled that the 15-year-old possessed the calculated malice of a seasoned criminal, certifying her to stand trial as an adult. This pivotal legal decision stripped away the protective cloak of juvenile anonymity. The state charged her with first-degree, premeditated fatal assault. a crime carrying a potential sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. The legal battle lines formed, setting the stage for a highly charged courtroom showdown. The family of the young victim braced for a grueling, protracted fight for justice. On January 10, 2012, the imposing wooden doors of the Cole County Courthouse swung open for the final legal proceedings. To avoid a brutal jury trial and escape a mandatory life sentence, the defense team orchestrated a calculated legal maneuver. The teenager accepted a plea agreement, pleading guilty to reduced charges of second-degree fatal assault and armed criminal action. During the emotionally charged sentencing phase, the defense presented extensive psychiatric testimony aiming to mitigate her culpability. Medical professionals detailed her long history of institutionalization, severe depression, and profound emotional disturbances. They highlighted the systemic failures of the state psychiatric facilities that released her back into the community without proper law enforcement notification. Despite these arguments, the prosecution focused entirely on the sheer malice required to dig a grave days in advance. The judge weighed the conflicting testimonies, ultimately delivering a severe and permanent consequence. The court sentenced the perpetrator to life in prison with the possibility of parole for the primary charge. The judge then added a consecutive 30-year sentence for the weapon charge, ensuring decades of hard confinement. Heavy chains rattled across the courtroom floor as bailiffs escorted the convicted predator away to a maximum security state penitentiary. The passage of time did little to erase the deep scars left on the rural community of St. Martins. In July of the year 2024, the convicted offender appeared before the Missouri Board of Parole. After serving 15 years behind bars, she requested early release back into society. The parole board reviewed the chilling facts of the case, the pre-dug graves, and the devastating impact on the victim's family. The board denied the request for release, ensuring she remained confined within the concrete walls of the state facility. Her next opportunity for a parole hearing will not occur until the year 2029. In the wake of this devastating case, lawmakers in Missouri passed rigid new legislation barring parole for future juvenile defendants convicted of similar premeditated atrocities. This systemic update closed the legal loopholes that the perpetrator once researched on her bedroom computer. Back in the quiet neighborhood, the towering oak trees continue to cast long shadows over the dirt pathways. The Olton family carries an unimaginable burden of grief, honoring the memory of the vibrant young girl who loved animals and feared the dark. Elizabeth Olten possessed a gentle spirit and a bright future, both stolen by a predator hiding right next door. Her tragic loss serves as a harrowing reminder that the most terrifying threats often wear the most ordinary faces.